Some amends that we make to humans may be rejected, or it may take a long time in order to make them. And if they're very serious, I think that in order to gain forgiveness, we have to wait till the right time to try to make those amends. And I think that it is terribly important to get the advice of older people in the program who can advise you on proper timing. They may not be able to. You're just going to have to feel your way there. But I know for a fact a man who could get up in front of an AA group and bring the whole group to tears with how grateful he was for everything that had come his way. And there's a wife seated right in front of him who'd been waiting for 16 years to hear 2 words. I'm sorry. Still waiting. And many people say, well, I figure staying sober is making amends. No, it's not. It's staying sober. Making amends is making amends. And one of the big reasons why we don't make them is embarrassment and shame. But we do have to climb over the difficult. I remember a man who was so sorry for what he had done to his family. And he came to see me one day at the school where I was teaching. And he said, I've got to talk to you. I said, what's up? He said, my wife is gone. She has left me completely. Her parting words were, I don't ever want to lay eyes on you ever again in my life. Now, he said, that's extremely difficult, but I accept it because I can't not accept it. It's a fact of my life. I only hope to God that one day she might get into Al-Anon and learn something about this disease and what it did to me and what it made out of me and what it made me become, and at least have some kind of understanding of how and why I behaved the way I did during the drinking. I knew him as Dr. Jekyll, a wonderful, caring, sweet, really a sweet, kind man. But she had lived for many years with Mr. Hyde. And I didn't know what to say to him, really. I never hold up false hope to anybody. I think that's a crime. I don't think God would do that. But I said this, and I said it infallibly, and I'll say it to any of you in this room who may be in a similar situation. You may never be forgiven, but that's something that you must accept. But I said this to him. Whether or not your wife will ever learn, I don't know, and I'd be a fool to try to say. But I can tell you that if you stay sober today and you do the same thing tomorrow and you keep doing that, good things will happen in your life. That is infallibly true. My friends, it was 15 years later. I was in Pittsburgh to speak at a dinner, and this man and his wife came walking up to me arm in arm to say hello. All right, it was one of those things. It was kind of a miraculous thing, really. Obviously it was. And I'm not saying that that will happen to any of you, but perhaps not being able to make it up may be the price that I have to pay for whatever it is that I did that I'm sorry for. All I need to know is that God Almighty has forgiven me, and if that's good enough for Him, it's good enough for me. I'll give you another example that's even more striking. I knew a man who was a professional writer, and he wrote a weekly feature for Look magazine. The Look headquarters were in New York, and he also wrote a daily feature for the Chicago Tribune. By his own account, this man, Austin Ripley, was an arrogant drunk, and he offended everybody just by breathing. And after he got sober, he was so intrigued at the nature of AA and how it worked and what it had done for him, he took a solid year of his life off to get to meet and know Bill and Dr. Bob. And I think that he knew their minds and hearts inside out, as they did his. Well, anyway, he made a list of people he had harmed. It was about 1.75 miles long. And he resolved to make amends and seek their forgiveness. And he made an all-day appointment to fly to New York to the Look building. And he had appointments with all of them, from the CEO up in the penthouse down to the fellow that opens the front door. And of course, Rip had the heart of a saint and the tongue of a poet. He really could sell refrigerators to Eskimos. And he went in to each office. He had an appointment all the way down. And in that inimitable way of his, he explained alcoholism and what it had done to him and why it had made him behave the way he did and think the way he did. And he was receiving all kinds of forgiveness. You will notice, if your sorrow is sincere, you will be stunned at the generosity and the kindness and the forgiveness of people. Some you may be disappointed in. So be it. Anyway, he got down to the office of a vice president who made him wait for 20 minutes. And when he was ushered into the man's office, he was not invited to sit down. And he was asked, "What do you want?" And Rip told him, "I know that I have caused you grief. This is why. I am genuinely sorry. I beg your forgiveness." And this was the reply verbatim. "Ripley, you were an SOB then, and you are still one. Get the hell out of my office." And he was crushed. He was absolutely crushed. And he was angry. And he walked out of that office, went to the elevator, and pressed the button. He wanted to wait for the elevator, go down, get a cab, go to the airport, and fly back to Chicago. But while he was waiting for the elevator to come, these thoughts struck him. Haven't you forgotten the forgiveness you've been given? Haven't you forgotten the rest of the people to whom you owe apologies? And then it struck him. That man did not have to accept my apology. I had to give it. And when the elevator came, he hit the next floor and went on with it. The other one was an essay in Newsweek magazine, and this one struck me like a truck. It was written by a young man whose father was an alcoholic who got into AA and had about 3 years of sobriety. And the father, trying to make amends to his family, called him one day and made an appointment to go over to see him. And he met the boy in the kitchen of his son's house. And he went into quite a talk about how sorry he was for the pain and the anguish and everything else that he had caused his family during the drinking days. And he got up and he put his arms around the son, and just sobbing, he said, "I am just so sorry." And the next line in that essay, the boy said, "That was not enough." Does he think he can wipe out 20 years of physical abuse, making us children watch him beat our mother and then beat us? Oh no, that was not enough. The feelings that that boy had, perfectly valid, I guess, but the unresolved hatred in his own heart might one day destroy him. I have been privileged to meet a lot of POWs in talking around military installations. And I stand in awe of these men. That is, those who coped with prison and resumed their careers when they got out. And I remember speaking to a colonel, a commanding officer at one of our Air Force bases in England. And I said, Colonel, I've been telling people everywhere that probably the main characteristic, or the one that impressed me about POWs, is the fact that I've noticed these men don't hate. He said, no, Father, we couldn't. That was a luxury we could not afford. We could not hate. Hatred destroys the hater. Somebody once asked Stockdale, the man that ran with Perot, he was superintendent at our Naval Academy when he got out. And he used to speak at luncheons around. And after a luncheon, somebody at Kiwanis Club or Alliance or whatever said, Admiral, you're walking down a street in Annapolis and suddenly you see one of the North Vietnamese that used to torture you in prison. What would you do? What would be your immediate reaction? He said, I'd say hello. What do you say to anybody that you know? Those men had to work to get there, to get to that stage of thinking and behaving. The feeling of anger is understandable. Giving way to it, no. If you are genuine in your apologies, you have a right to forgiveness. And whoever breaks that right has the problem, not you. And now we come to a phenomenon. It's over here. The obligation on our part to forgive others. Alcoholics and drug addicts cause a lot of pain, and very often when talking to the young at Ashley, just one-on-one, have you ever even wondered of the pain that you caused in the hearts of your mother and father? You'll never know it really until and unless you have a child of your own who becomes addicted and you watch them on a downward spiral towards self-destruction and you're absolutely incapable of doing anything about it. Only a parent who has experienced that can understand it. And I think that in the world of stealing, one of the most precious and serious things that we steal is time. Not just time from employers, but time from our loved ones. How many who are in the world of addiction shy away from their loved ones. I don't want you to see me. I don't want you to hear me. You're liable to discover what's wrong with me. And so we steal valuable time from them. I believe that alcoholics are also offended by others, even well-meaning others. How about the curses and the screaming and the accusations? You're weak-willed, you have no spine, you can't keep a promise. That hurts in here. And there are those who get into proper therapy and understand that they have to make amends, and they come to the alcoholic or drug addict with their sorrow. What is to prompt us to forgive them? Well, I think a basic realization that if I want forgiveness for what I've done wrong, so does every other human being. So does every other human being. Christ himself taught us priests how to hear confessions, and I think he taught the whole world how to forgive. When those who were out to trap him caught a woman in the act of adultery and threw her at his feet and said, "What are we going to do with her? The law says she ought to be stoned to death. What do you say?" Well, he knew that if he said, "Well, stone her," the people would have said, "Well, come on." And if he had said, "No, don't stone her to death," that it said, "You're breaking the law that you claim came from God, who you claim is your Father." Well, he wanted to give him a chance to think it over and get out of there, and he began to scratch around in the sand, and they kept at it. "What do you say?" And he dropped the stick, and he looked at them and he said, "Well, if that's what the law calls for, then stone her. But let me make a suggestion. Let the one who has never done anything wrong in his life begin. Let him throw the first one." Now, the fact that they had to walk away was a foregone conclusion. That's not important. But the order in which they left, with the oldest leading the crowd. Now they're gone. There's only the woman and Christ. He never once mentioned what she had done. Didn't even refer to it. "Are there none to condemn you?" She said, "No." Well, he said, "Neither do I. Go and sin no more." Wrapped up in my sorrow is a purpose not to do again the things that made me sorry in the first place. And so he resolved her guilt. When we forgive, we certainly get more than we give. A sense of fulfillment, a sense of being human again. What's a human being? A creature made in the image of God. And if we're in the image of God, we ought to try to act like him. And the big thing is to forgive. In the official night prayers of the church, there are a choice of many hymns at the beginning. And in one of them is this line, "And what needs forgiving at the end of this day, dear Father, now forgive." In my own personal formula of night prayers, every night when I go to bed, I always offer an act of contrition or sorrow for whatever has gone wrong during the day. But I believe that you and I can learn a lesson from the lives of good people we know, and we all know genuinely wonderful, wonderful, good, solid people. And one was my mother. She had a third-grade education, but she was consumed with her profession, motherhood. Totally devoted to her husband and her 7 children. She lived an ordinary life and a very difficult life. She had very little to ask of God. She only wanted 3 things. She wanted to see her children grown and able to take care of themselves, or married with somebody to take care of them. She wanted to see me ordained, and she wanted to die out of debt, not owing anyone. Since her requests were so simple, they were granted. She died of uremic poisoning. I remember one night I was in Mercy Hospital about 3 days before her death. I was the only one of the family at that particular time in the room, and I was reading my divine office, and she was in a kind of a coma in the bed, lying on her back. And there was dead silence in the room, and I heard her try to talk. And I closed the book and got up and walked over and leaned my ear over near her mouth. And I heard her whisper, "O Lord, be merciful to me, a sinner." And I looked down at my mother's face and realized my mother doesn't know what a real sin is. I believe that the innocence of good people who have such a delicate conscience that they are very aware of even minor flaws in their behavior, can perhaps teach us to try to develop such a conscience, and our forgiveness will be assured. But the biggest motive of all for forgiving others comes again in AA. At the end of every meeting here in the Western world, it is pretty customary to say the Lord's Prayer, and in it is this invocation, a petition. It's a request from God. Forgive me, please, as I forgive. I wonder what would happen to us if he answered that. If he forgave us to the degree that we forgive others. If I ask that, I'd better mean it. But living the good life, I'll never forget, and I'll wind up with this. In the seminary, we used to go to confession every Saturday night. My confessor happened to be Father John Sullivan. And this one Saturday, I made my confession, uncharitable thoughts, sloppy at prayer, on and on. And I said, Father, I don't know whether I'm making any progress or not. I'm confessing these same things week after week. He said, my dear boy, you'll be confessing them when you're 85. I said, thanks a lot. I mean, there's no growth. The essence of living according to the will of God, which we pray for in step 11 of our program. If I succeed in doing good, it's only because of the grace of God. If I fail, it's through my own human weakness. So actual success or failure doesn't mean all that much. My desire to please God is what pleases God. My desire to please him is what pleases him. And I feel absolutely certain in the depths of my own soul that those of you in the program who are conscientiously trying to live it are trying to please God, and so you do. And forgiveness for anything is yours. I want to thank you for being here this evening. It means a great deal to me when I'm doing one of these things, especially a brand new one like this, is to have the presence and the good wishes of friends. So thank you again so much, and good night.